All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to City Hall, whether you're in person or online. Great to see everyone. I have a mask on because I've been sneezing, but no fever, tested negative for COVID. However, I think that folks should start masking up anyway because there's something going around in this neighborhood. So we'll wait till we get an official directive from the health department, but we do know that there is something going around. Wish everyone to be safe out there. All right, we'll have a moment of silence here. Nope, that's the general body meeting. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Williams.
I'm here.
Mayor Pro Tem Middleton.
I'm here.
Councilmember Baker.
Here.
Councilmember Caballero.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Present.
Councilmember Rist.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any announcements by my council colleagues? Yes, Councilmember Caballero.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. We will be taking up the appointment. If it's not listed, I can't remember, under other matters at the end. Thank you.
Yes. Councilmember Rist.
Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Madam City Manager, and City Council colleagues, as many of you all know, the two large stimulus bills passed by the Biden administration contain massive federal funds to address climate sustainability, environmental justice, and support for consumers in reducing carbon consumption. This is literally a one-time opportunity to access billions of federal dollars to address the city's goals for addressing climate change and creating a healthier environment for all residents. What's more, this is not just one grant opportunity, but rather multiple sources of funds across several federal agencies. It's critical that we here in Durham take advantage of this one-time opportunity and act now, given that with next year's presidential election, it's not clear the long-term availability of these federal funds. For that reason, I'd like to ask the city staff, in collaboration with the Environmental Affairs Board, to come to an upcoming work session, ideally the next one if we can organize that, to share with the council the status of our efforts to access these federal funds, the multiple funding opportunities going forward, and what it will take for the city of Durham to maximize this fundraising opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Rist. Any other colleagues?
Yeah, do we need to, yeah.
Oh, so are you
Want to place on the agenda?
I want to place on the, well, I want to ask for a presentation on the next work session if we can schedule that. I think it's a question for the staff in part.
Thank you very much for that question. Certainly, we have up-to-date information on what we have been monitoring ourselves. Anything beyond that, it probably would take, one additional work session to get it together. But I'm going to ask staff that is here on their opinion whether or not it would be the next work session that we could come forward.
Just real quick, is it better that we just ask staff to, take a look at it and then bring it when you can, or? I just don't want us to micromanage, but we can set our expectations.
No, I appreciate that. I think again, there's a certain amount of urgency involved here. I think this is kind of in the next 6 months, a lot of this is going to be happening. With the election in the fall, it's not clear whether these funds will be available long-term, even though it's money available now. So we do need to act in the short term. So I think with due haste, but again, appreciating the staff.
Mr. Mayor, for me.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, colleagues. Good afternoon, everyone. I know that the staff, as a matter of standing practice, regularly monitors any funds available to the city, be they federal or state. So I'd like to ask staff, is this new information that the staff is getting today? Are we not aware of this? Is this something that we need to be pursuing outside of our regular
Good afternoon, Mayor Williams, City Council members, Bertha Wimbush, Deputy City Manager. We are very much aware of those opportunities that are available to cities, some of which are available to the City of Durham. As the manager mentioned, we do keep up-to-date information on grant opportunities for which we have applied that are pending availability. Some, they come out at different intervals. And we also ones that we have had our consultant look at to determine whether we're eligible for those funds. We've applied for many of those opportunities. Some we received some funding, excuse me, and some we have not received funding. The deadline has not passed. So we're happy to bring you an update within the next few weeks. I would say we would like the opportunity to make sure that if we need to have additional resources present with us to talk about some of those opportunities, we have an opportunity to do that as well. Does that answer?
When you say additional resources, do you mean additional staff or?
Well, our consultants with us to explain. In some cases, it has been brought to our attention some of the grant opportunities, and it was determined that we're not eligible to receive those grants because they're specific to rural areas or certain populations. So we have a running database on all of that, but we may want to have some additional resources here. So if there are questions about why we hadn't applied for a grant, to be able to make sure that our consultant can provide that information. And we have multiple staff members in different departments who have grant resources in those departments who are also looking at grants that are coming through our centralized city manager's office, as well as transportation, general services, the police department, parks and recreation. So there are other grant resources in departments working on grants as well. And we're trying to capture all of that. So we certainly want to have time to make sure that we are prepared to answer your questions. However, I'm happy to come back with what we have at an earlier date if you feel that's necessary.
Yeah, I think if we can update on that as soon as possible at the next work session or at the next feasible work session, that'd be great.
Sure,
with any resources you need to bring.
Absolutely, we can do that as well.
That works. Thank you, Deputy City Manager. Councilmember Baker.
Similarly, so I've been speaking with members of the Walltown Community Association, members, residents in Walltown, as well as residents in other parts of our community and council members here about small area planning, which is something that I've heard interest from across our community. One avenue that I've been exploring is potentially a resolution and what that might look like. We passed a resolution for expanding housing choices in 2019 regarding monitoring of the outcome of that change in the ordinance. The rules of procedure are not particularly clear on this. It's a little bit of a chart your own course. So I wanted to raise this as something to potentially add to the work session, the next work session or a future work session, while continuing to have conversations with staff about the best avenue forward on this particular issue, and keeping it broad so that we wouldn't just restrict something to Northgate Mall, but would also consider other parts of the city, and in a time frame that is actually reasonable for staff to be able to conduct something like that. I wanted to raise that with the council tonight, just for conversation. Would we want to put something like that on the next work session or on a future work session, or do you see a separate path where we bring something to JCCPC first? Just wanted to hear your opinion on that.
Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you. I appreciate Councilmember Baker's request. I think the appropriate place would be, since land use issues are both the purview of City Council and County Commission, normally or typically things of that nature go there first. And Councilmember Baker is part of JCCPC, so I think making sure it gets added to the agenda in February, and I'm looking at staff right now, would be a good next step. Thank you.
Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. I think it might be a good idea to have the conversation, whether it's a resolution or not. Because I'm not on JCC PC anymore, I want to make sure that my voice is heard on that matter as a council. So I think it would be good to bring it to work session.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to my colleague, Councilmember Riss. I think it's an important conversation to have. I do want to associate myself with Councilmember Caballero's comments, and I think it speaks to Councilmember Freeman's concerns as well. I think when we did the resolution for EHC, it was part of a continuum which included a conversation with JCCPC and attending law ordinance as well. Resolutions, I think for the purposes the very important purposes that you're pursuing, resolutions tend to be, they don't have the force of law. They're not a directive to the staff. Oftentimes they're aspirational. What I would suggest in association with Councilmember Caballero's comments is to start with the JCCPC. I'm glad you're on it, Councilmember Baker. I think Councilmember Caballero is about to assume the chair of that. And to Councilmember Freeman's point, anything work product that comes out of JCCPC ultimately has to come before us anyway. So we will definitely have an opportunity as a council to discuss it. I think it's an important conversation. I think it should start with JCCPC. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Welcome. Any other comments? That's good? Okay, good. Thank you all so much. All right, at this time, I don't think I have any announcements. If I did, I forgot them. Actually, give me one moment. All right, thank you. At this time, I'll acknowledge the city manager for any priority items.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor Williams, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, and members of the Durham City Council. The city manager's office has no priority items for you today.
Thank you. It's a new day. That's what's happening. Madam Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor Williams, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. It's good to see you all. The city attorney's office has two priority items today, so we're making up a little bit for the manager. The first is a time-sensitive legal request. I sent all of you a memorandum late last night, so you might not have seen it, but I'm going to invite Assistant City Attorney Anne Marie Tosco up. This is, again, a similar request to one that we brought you in December. It's a friend of the court brief request from another municipality, and Anne Marie's going to give you a quick overview of that.
Good afternoon. As Attorney Rayberg indicated, I'm here today because our office received a request recently to submit an amicus brief in an ongoing litigation that a previous council requested our office support. The plaintiffs in this litigation consist of 16 local restaurants who are seeking business interruption insurance coverage from defendant insurance companies for losses they incurred while closed during the government orders related to the early months of the COVID-19 pandemic. The plaintiffs were successful at the trial level in the first instance in the nation of a judgment in favor of these types of policyholders making such a claim, but the insurance companies appealed the matter to the North Carolina Court of Appeals, at which time plaintiffs' counsel reached out to this council who reached out to our office to submit an amicus brief in support of these local restaurants. This was done by the city of Portland in a similar litigation in the state of Oregon. As I've described to you before, an amicus brief is one submitted by a person or group who's not a party to a case but has a strong interest in the litigation. The Court of Appeals brief described the city's interest in this case as requiring insurance companies who are purportedly in the business of protecting businesses from losses to honor their policies during times of crises. By not doing so, as in the pandemic, local governments may be on the hook to assist these businesses and protect them from economic loss and survive. You may recall the city doing this very thing in the early days of the pandemic, such as by establishing the Small Business Recovery Fund, which I believe as of April of 2021 had issued $1.5 million to local businesses. The brief argued to the Court of Appeals that this type of support should be supplemental to insurance claims as opposed to a substitute for insurance coverage when companies deny these claims. The City of Charlotte and former North Carolina Insurance Commissioner Wayne Goodwin joined the city in its amicus brief. However, the Court of Appeals ruled in favor of the defendant insurance companies. As I said, this litigation is ongoing, and in late December, our office received a request to support an amicus brief to the North Carolina Supreme Court as it has approved the plaintiff's request for review. Given a previous council approved supporting this litigation by submitting an amicus brief to the Court of Appeals, we wanted to bring it back to this new council to determine if you all concurred with our office continuing to support the litigation before the North Carolina Supreme Court. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Mayor Pro Tem, do you have questions?
Now, I thought we already green-lighted this, didn't we?
We did too.
You did, and so as Anne Marie just described, though, that was at a different phase of the litigation. This is now going up again, and we've been asked to submit a wholly new brief before a different court, and it was a different council. And so our practice, as you'll notice more recently, has been to bring it back to make sure you all are still, a majority of the council still agrees with the policy initiative behind this legal activity.
I'm sorry, I thought we had thumbs up this.
No,
but I'm good, I'm cool with
Okay.
it. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, we brought a DACA issue to you
Yeah, no,
3 weeks ago.
it's cool with me.
Colleagues?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, the second priority item that the city attorney's office has is that the council entertain a brief closed session at the close of regular business today. The motion required to authorize this closed session is to hold a closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A3 for attorney-client consultation concerning the handling of a settlement demand for a yet-to-be-filed liability claim.
Thank you. Do we have to make that motion now?
You can make it now, or you can make it at the end of the meeting. Wait, if you'd prefer.
Yeah, let's wait until we are taking action on it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, just don't let me forget. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, City Council members, the City Clerk's office has no priority items.
Thank you. At this time, I will read the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of items for the council to address. It can be pulled by any member of the council or member of the public. Item number 1, approval of city council minutes. Item number 2, Durham City Council Environmental Affairs Board appointment. Item number 3, resolution in support of Black teens in crisis. I would like to pull that item.
It's been asked to be pulled by resident.
Okay, all right, sounds good. Number 4, contract with Open Table Ministries Incorporated, temporary weather-related emergency shelter and supportive services. Number 5, cooperative group purchase contract, rear mount ladder fire truck. Number 6, contract amendment number 12 for ST-264C, professional services related to Fayetteville Road improvements. Number 7, contract amendment 1 to ST-327C, pavement management services. Number 8,
I'd
contract.
like to pull that one.
Is that number 7?
Yep.
Right. Number 8, contract ST-329, street repairs and repaving, 2024. Number 9, contract ST-329C, pavement management services. Number 10, contract ST-330, pavement preservation, 2024. Number 11, contract ST-331, unpaved roads improvements, 2024. Number 12, contract SW9-94, sidewalk repairs, 2024.
Mayor,
It's been pulled by a resident.
I don't want to pull this, I just want to name from 12 up through number 7, just the amount, the incredible amount that we are providing in road improvements and sidewalk improvements, and it was because of the historic amounts that were included in this year's budget. So I just want to thank staff because it's a realization of some of our core goals as a city. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, this is great. 13, contract SW-94C, inspection and ombudsman services. 14, North Carolina Department of Transportation Schedule C and Schedule D municipal agreements for the maintenance and operations of the Durham traffic signal system. Number 15, construction of a traffic signal at South Miami Boulevard, Juniper Street, and North Guthrie Avenue. Number 16, does someone say something? Guthrie, what did I say? Guthrie, okay. Number 17, fiscal year 2023-2024 transit CIP ordinance amendment. Number 18, supplemental agreement. Number 2, for on-call professional services for the Fayetteville and Holloway transit emphasis corridors. And we have a finance department presentation on the Equal Business Opportunity Program update. And number 20, text amendment, tier query. Number 21, zoning map change, tier query, watershed overlay. 22, zoning map change, Cortez Drive townhouses. And we have a citizens matter, number 23, by Yotam Kahana.
So he pulled items 3,
12,
and 7.
7.
3, 7, 12 have been pulled.
This citizen item, can we let them go first, or, okay.
Citizen items first.
Okay, good. All right, at this time, we will address citizens matters first, and I'll first call up Yotam Kahana. And as they are coming up to the podium, I just want to remind just everyone, and especially staff, we want to make sure that we are holding true to our processes. I did extend the amount of people who can speak online. There was a slight discrepancy of competing unknowingly who can sign up to speak first between online and in person. So what I did is extended the amount of people who can speak online as well as the amount of people who can speak in person, being 10 each. So today, somehow we have a little more than 10. We have 13, so I'm going to honor that. I just want to make sure that as we are tightening up our procedures, that we'll follow suit with that.
There is no way to make it a good presentation. Oh.
Derek.
Could I start?
Yes.
Hi, my name is
Feel free to
Yotam
state your
Kahana.
name, and you have 3 minutes.
Can I start again? Hi, my name is Yotam Kahana. I'm here today to urge the City Council to deal with the anti-Semitism and the destruction of the city property by the pro-Palestinians protester instead of the international warfare. The Durham municipality is local and not global. The city is suffering again and again from the pro-Palestinians destroying our city center, blockage, the high road of 147, by the way, without charges up until today, to the destruction of the Starbucks walls and the walls all across the city. And let me emphasize that The city council is local and not global, and it's not a place for international warfare. But if you yet to consider international warfare and divide our community, please, I would like to share with you a few things about my homeland. Jewish people came from Judea. It's a place in Israel. This is our homeland. Gaza citizens have been given this Gaza Strip in 2005, and ever since, they keep on shooting rockets over my home. During ceasefire and off ceasefire. Hamas is the one that started the war in 2008, 2014, and right now in 2023. On October 7, they murdered US citizens, Israelis, Jews, Thai, Arabs, Christians, without distinction. Hamas even kidnapped and beheaded babies, elderly, rape and murder women and children, and burned them alive. And add to the crime, when Israel tried to retrieve her kidnapped citizens, they used the people of Gaza as human shields. Another fact that during the war of Hamas, they had the opportunity to agree to a ceasefire. They refused again and again. Not everyone that wants ceasefire want to destroy and annihilate Israel, but everybody that want to ask for a ceasefire. Hamas and the Palestinian government group had the opportunity to become a Palestinian state in 1947, 1949, 1967, 1978, 2000, 2001, 2008, 2014, 2019, and to become a state. They refuse again and again because they say, from the river to the sea, annihilation all over Israel with no place for the Jewish people. The leader of Hamas are very rich people. They have $11 billion. They do not share it with the Palestinian people, which create a nest of terror in Gaza. The leader of Hamas sit in Qatar and understand that they cannot win the war against Israel. So they invest throughout like calibrations, calibration group in order to go ahead and come to the city council around the United States with very, very detailed instructions to how to do this and what to say over there in order to United States to go ahead and back on their only friends in the Middle East. Let me be clear. The war against Hamas is Hamas-Israeli war, not Palestinians-Israeli war, not Israel-Arab war, is Hamas-Israeli war. And as such, it should stay like this. The city council should deal with the stuff that's important for our citizens. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. I should add, as someone who has engaged in lots of advocacy work, I've had my share of making signs and holding them up, but we do not allow it in City Hall. So please, thank you. Please make sure that you're fine to have your signs, but let's not hold them up to block the rest of the view. Yeah. Start online.
So the very first person is Mimi Kessler, and she's talking about pay gems.
Okay, sounds good. All right, Madam Clerk, we're going to start with online. The first person I have is Mimi Kessler. Ms. Kessler, can you hear me? Do you see her on there? Okay. Next person I have is Emily Price. Ms. Price, can you hear me? You see them on there? Okay. Next person, Leslie St. Dre. Oh, all right.
What? Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Sorry.
Leslie, can you hear me? Madam Clerk, do you see them?
She's there.
She's there.
Mr. Mayor, I think she was on and then she went off. I see her right now.
See her on.
I see her now. Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Oh, there you go. All right. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I am Leslie St. Dre, Durham resident here as a member of Mothers for Ceasefire and Durham Beyond Policing. We once again urge you to adopt and pass UB 150's drafted resolution. Rather than a statement that holds much less weight in the eyes of Congress members that we need to be swaying to stop these atrocities. It's hands down the least that you could do, given that our tax dollars are being used for war crimes rather than housing, livable wages, healthcare, and other urgent things Durhamites need to survive here. Please take a new look at the resolution link. It's updated with the most recent number of Israel's murders, along with information about South Africa's case against them in the International Court of Justice charging genocide, of which the U.S. will also be found in violation of the Genocide Convention should our government and the U.S. presiding judge not impede the process. On top of killing over 30,000 Palestinians, including 11,000 kids, when adding those presumed dead under the rubble, Netanyahu's genocidal regime is starving the majority of the population and has destroyed most of their clean water supply. At this point, Israel has dropped 2 nuclear bombs worth of explosives on Palestinians in Gaza. For context, Gaza is roughly the size of Raleigh, with over 1.7 more people. Zionism's founders have been plotting to ethnically cleanse the area since 1895. It is up to us to stop these nightmares. Netanyahu recently said he is working to facilitate the, quote, voluntary migration of Gazans to other countries. When the options are to leave or to have Israeli occupation forces slaughter your entire family, starve you to death, or ensure you die of dehydration or preventable illness, that is forced displacement, which constitutes ethnic cleansing. I ask that you all imagine your grandparents' land and homes were stolen by settlers arriving from faraway lands only 75 years ago. They killed 15,000 of your people then, destroying over 530 villages and ethnically cleansing over 750,000 of your people from their land, forcing them to live in refugee camps and never leave an area the size of a U.S. city for generations. These settlers continue to limit your food, water, medical access, and movement. You aren't allowed to travel elsewhere or go home to the house that your grandfather built for your family. Your nonviolent resistance is met with settler bullets and worsening apartheid. And now they've wiped out your entire family line. They severed the limbs of over 1,000 kids in your area, forcing many to undergo amputations without anesthesia, which led some to die from the pain. These are the lived histories of Palestinians under Israeli occupation, apartheid, and now genocide. I want to remind you all that Durham passed a resolution against South African apartheid in 1981. It is shameful that while occupation, apartheid, genocide, and ethnic cleansing are happening before our very eyes, you aren't yet willing to even introduce a resolution for permanent ceasefire. Palestine is the moral litmus test. Palestine is the moral litmus test.
Thank you so much. Leslie, no, you can't really hear the notification, but that is your 3 minutes. Thank you so much. All right, next I have Raina Rusenko. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, there you go. Thank you for joining us. You have 3 minutes.
Great. Thank you. Hi, my name is Raina Rusenko. I'm a Durham resident. I grew up here and I first attended Bethel Synagogue 35 years ago. I'm Jewish and a descendant of Holocaust survivors, and I have ties to Israel. I also have a PhD in global history, specifically on British Empire, which I do plan to make relevant here. I'm here to implore the Council to adopt and pass the draft resolution for a permanent ceasefire and no aid to Israel, because such political action is imperative and the right thing to do. My grandfather survived the Holocaust as a resistance fighter. He smuggled weapons into his ghetto in Poland, escaped when it was liquidated, and spent the war sabotaging the German military. I honor my family history by acknowledging the legitimacy and importance of resistance. At 22, while in Israel, I spent time thinking about the homelessness I saw there. In an epiphany, I began to see my capacity to walk by and disregard unhoused persons is analogous to how people must have walked by the Jewish ghettos in my grandfather's time. My Jewishness has led me to see homelessness differently and how it is connected to systems of mass death. I've spent decades studying homelessness and its histories. I know that anti-vagrancy policies in late 19th century England primarily targeted Jewish people who were being cast out of Russia and Europe by pogroms. British and other imperial powers found ways to arrest, deport, and otherwise refuse Jewish refugees. Their distaste for growing Jewish communities, in fact, underlay their decision to help establish the State of Israel, which they called a national home for Jewish people. From its start, Israel has relied on this exploitation of Jewish identity, and this has been at the root of far-reaching Jewish opposition historically and today. Also, many Jewish people recognize the ongoing mass displacement and deprivation clearly endured by Palestinians as a continuation of the same asymmetries of power and the same systemic harms our ancestors endured. Frameworks that present Palestinians and Jews as at odds with each other are wrong. We, in fact, face similar oppressions, and our interests are intertwined. This said, under no circumstances should our tax dollars be used to prop up Israel's military or its broader apartheid system. These keep no one safe. They endanger millions of Jews, Palestinians, and people around the world. If we care about lessons from the Holocaust and other genocides, then we must do the work of recognizing injustices that lead to mass death. We can do that here in Durham now by divesting our tax dollars from Israel's occupation and war, and instead start investing in resources that sustain life, like healthcare, the HEART program, enhancing housing security, and providing fair wages and labor protections to workers. As a Jewish American and Durham resident who has spent my entire lifetime grappling with these issues, I urge the City Council to do right by adopting and passing this draft resolution and actively do more to end systemic harms and mass death.
Thank you so much. That is your time. Thanks for joining us. Next person I have is Marie Garlock. Can you hear me?
I came in person, actually.
Okay. Did you fill out a physical card as well? Did you fill out a physical card as well, or just the online form? Okay, gotcha. You're thorough, I see. All right. So what we'll do is when I move to in person, I'll call you up at that time. She don't need to fill out a physical one now. Okay. All right. Next, I have King Sage. King, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. You have 3 minutes.
Wonderful. What's up, y'all? My name is King Sage. I'm a resident of East Durham. As someone who voted to support the election of many of you who are sitting on the City Council body, I am disheartened and disappointed to witness the lack of urgency from our City Council on the matter of calling for a ceasefire in Gaza, which, to be clear, is merely a symbolic signaling to our larger nation-state government of the necessary solidarity that we have with the largely unarmed Palestinian community who are being violently martyred since the genocidal campaign in Gaza was renewed. I urge you to not succumb to the fear-mongering lies of earlier speakers that told a narrative of Hamas's so-called terror. Instead, I encourage you to sit with me in a place of wonder I have held for the past 3 months. I wonder often where the compassion for and commitment to advocating for the liberation of those who are suffering lies. I wonder if it exists at all. And if it does, why must we beg for you to take a stand against these very clear acts of genocide and apartheid, which Leslie just so impactfully spoke to, and Raina as well? I wonder, should you not want to do this of your own conviction? Should your duty not to be to protecting the freedom of all people? Or is occupying this seat just an ego boost for you? If your own conviction and moral compass is not setting off blaring sirens in response to the multi-front genocidal attacks we are witnessing, if you live in the lie of the gray area or complexity in the face of what is clearly the enactment and continuation of a genocidal campaign, then I begin to wonder, to what is your duty in this moment? To whom do you offer your service, your representation, and your commitment to legislation? This country prides itself on democracy and then stalls out in the places where the appointment of elected officials could actually make a change and bring forth great impact. If only you were able to listen to your people in this moment. And I say your people in the we sense of the word, that there is no ownership to be had in this relationship, but think of the ways that we could know liberation if there were, in fact, deep listening, compassion, and collaboration in how you heard our voices today and every other day. Don't make us beg you. Sign the resolution and start rebuilding the people's faith in our elected leadership. My comrades have even written out an eloquent and clear draft resolution. So I am asking you to please sign on to the UE 150 resolution, ceasefire resolution, which we have and will continue to flood your inboxes. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. Next person I have is Anna Odubadi.
Hi, thank you.
Hi, welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Anna Ordubadi. I'm the co-chair of the North Carolina Green Party, and I'm a member of Jewish Voice for Peace and Mothers for Ceasefire. I have been horrified and moved to action at witnessing this genocide from my cell phone. We have watched as our president and politicians on the left and the right, as well as our government intelligence communities and media outlets, have repeated some of the lies that we heard here today about what is happening. I would encourage each of you to please look into the brave reporting of Jewish ally Max Blumenthal or Gabor Mate or Norman Finkelstein or the Israeli soldiers themselves who have come forward to tell the truth about what is actually happening and the evil of the apartheid and brutal occupation of Gaza and the West Bank that is taking place. I think it's important that we take the responsibility and use our privilege to find out what's actually happening and to take action. Unfortunately, it's complicated to get to the truth. Apparently, quote, Hamas was there has been used as justification to bomb hospitals, refugee camps, and the same people who have been moved to compassionate action around the violence in Ukraine are not taking the time to look at what's really going on. I think with the circumstances and the facts where a child is dying every 10 minutes and the blatant calls for genocide and annihilation of the Gazan people by Israeli politicians and their leaders, these are facts that are undeniable and clear. Please take the time to look at what's really happening. We are being told to ignore what's in front of our faces. We are being told to deny what we're seeing in real time. And when that happens, we have to wonder, what would we have done during Jim Crow era or during slavery or when the indigenous people were being forced off their land and murdered in the genocide that took place on these lands? So I think it's really important that as our leaders, you take the time to find out what's really going on. It isn't hard, but you will have to dig a little bit deeper than what has been said by a lot of the folks in the media, as well as Biden and Blinken. Mothers in Gaza right now are marking their children's bodies in hopes that their remains can be identified to be laid together. There are children having limbs amputated and women undergoing C-sections without anesthesia. The war crimes of not allowing water or electricity or needed medical care to fight the disease that is slowly killing the survivors left in Gaza. It's a horror that I think we have to take the time to understand what's happening. The silence that is allowing this to go on by our tax dollars is your responsibility as our elected officials. So I think that in this position of power, the collective rage and heartbreak that we're experiencing.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Next up, we have Raina Masri. Raina, is it Raina or Rania? If you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. And
If you can pronounce your name, I want to make sure I get it right.
thank you. I appreciate that. Just think of Tanya Tucker. So think of me as the country singer. So it's Rania like Tanya. Thank you. May
you
I
have 3
begin?
minutes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to the Durham City Council for offering this virtual space for comment. My name is Rania Masri. I'm co-director of the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network. I'm also deeply heartbroken as my friends and family have been brutalized and starved in Gaza. I look up to Durham City's courageous pioneering stances, particularly that Durham is the first city in the country to protect its police department from militarization and military training by adopting a policy statement against police training with the Israeli military, and thus clearly recognizing the impact of international policies on our local lives. To continue this tradition of standing with justice, I ask you to adopt and pass the submitted draft resolution for a permanent ceasefire. This draft resolution has been supported by more than a dozen local community and labor groups and has already been submitted to the City Council. Let us agree there is no neutral position regarding genocide, oppression, and injustice. Saying no to a ceasefire means saying yes to bombing entire neighborhoods, burying families under the rubble, killing one child every 2 minutes, and killing 2 mothers every hour. That's what it means to reject a ceasefire. This is not a conflict between two nations. This is an ongoing genocide made with clear genocidal intent by an occupying state against an occupied population, as evidenced by South Africa's application to the International Court of Justice charging Israel with genocide. Let us agree, nothing could justify this brutality, absolutely nothing. And yes, this is both an international and a local issue. It is our taxpayer dollars, our weapons, our support, and our Durham residents and civilians who are crying out for your support and your outcry. More Palestinian children have been killed in Gaza than all the children killed in all the conflicts since 2019 combined. And today, 4/5 of all the people worldwide who are starving are in Gaza today. If we can just imagine that. So calling for a ceasefire would be an affirmation of the equality of life, an affirmation of national international law. Let us stand with the vast majority of Americans who want a ceasefire, with the 32 cities nationwide, including Scarborough, that have called for a public ceasefire. And as you debate this resolution, I appeal to each one of you to check your emails, because I sent you a statement written by members of the North Carolina General Assembly that asks for each and every elected official in this state to call for a permanent ceasefire. We already have 4 members of the Raleigh City Council that have signed this statement. So while you as a city council together debate this resolution, I urge individually each one of you to sign this statement. Thank you again for your time, and I appeal to your humanity and your courage, as Durham has showed us that you do have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I also, just in between, I want to thank you all for cooperating with the signs. Not to get too technical, but if we could just not let it go above our heads, just right here in front of us is good. You hold it in front of you, which is fine, but just not up, blocking the view of others. Where is Toby Lippin? Toby Lippin, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. You have 3 minutes. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for creating this opportunity. And I also want to thank those of you that are wearing masks to prevent the continuation of the pandemic that is going on right now. I'm a 69-year-old white Jewish woman who is a non-Zionist since I was in middle school, when my middle school teacher explained in 1967 what was going on in Israel. And I thought, this is not true what she's saying. It just smacked of racism and inauthenticity. And I'm sorry to say that here we are more than 50 years later, and I've watched Israel continue to morph into an oppressor and now a perpetrator of genocide. I urge you to pass a resolution, and as all of the speakers that have spoken before me, in favor of a ceasefire resolution, and I think we're talking about a permanent ceasefire resolution, there needs to be a change in what's going on in Israel. And unfortunately, we all have blood on our hands because our tax dollars have been paying to prop this up for many, 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 many years. And our tax dollars are way disproportionately spent on the military. I think about what could be done with more tax dollars, federal tax dollars here in Durham for affordable housing, public health, programs for young people, and on and on. And so what Hamas did on October 7th, I agree, was horrendous. However, Israel's aggression now, as people have said, has killed over 20,000 Palestinians, starving people, withholding water and electricity. I mean, this is, I think, the person that said, think about, I think it was Anna, about looking away. Many people looked away when the Nazi Holocaust was happening and said, oh, I don't believe that's happening. Even people here in the US. And if we do that, we are doing the same thing, as it would be looking away from, oh, we're going to have 2 water fountains, or we're going to, et cetera, et cetera. And so I urge you to pass a permanent ceasefire resolution. The one you have in front of you is great. I imagine you all will want to create your own, but passing a ceasefire resolution is essential. And I would add that those of you
Thank you
who
so much, Ms. Toby. That is your time, and thanks for joining us. Next, I have Blue Miller. Blue, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, you have 3 minutes. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Hello, City Council. Thank you for your time. I am a Durham resident and I work for Southern Vision Alliance and Student U. I would like to make clear that the people of Durham want a permanent ceasefire in Palestine and a no aid or arms to Israel resolution. This war did not begin on October 7th, and it began far before the existence of Hamas. This is not a Israel-Hamas war, as the person who spoke first claimed, but collective punishment towards the Palestinian people. The over 10,000 children and counting brutally murdered are not Hamas, and neither are these hospitals. They claim that the war began in the 2000s and that Israel gave Palestinians Gaza. How can settlers give land to indigenous people? The war began in 1948, and even beforehand, when Israelis first violently displaced Palestinians from their homes and have carried out a 75-year violent military occupation and ethnic cleansing campaign. I believe that if we, citizens of Durham, were displaced from our homes at gunpoint, forced into refugee camps, bombed in mass at hospitals and churches, and forced to move through checkpoints in our own homeland, starved and deprived of any water, and subject to mass shootings and torture, that we would resist. Zionists will call any resistance to this horror terrorism. And Israel has disallowed, criminalized, and violently taken out any Palestinian nonviolent resistance to the occupation. Myself and countless other people have sent you all emails and spoken at other work sessions condemning City Council's complacency to this genocide. I'm not sure if y'all have attended or witnessed, but each month and each week, citizens of Durham are turning out in the hundreds to demand justice in Palestine. Those of us demanding the end to ethnic cleansing, collective punishment, torture of children and civilians, mass displacement, white phosphorus and bombs, the mass shootings of schools, places of worship, and refugee camps, we are not radicals. We are just people unwilling to stand idly by and complacent to atrocities beyond our imagination. As I drive through Durham, I imagine if this were us. I imagine that folks were displaced from their homes in Lakewood and forced into a rural area only to be bombed en masse there. I think about Duke Hospital being bombed. I drive past downtown and think about what it would look like in rubble. I imagine this were us. And I ask that you do the same and understand your power here to put an end to the terror in Gaza. Passing a permanent ceasefire resolution, which requires very little of you, would create a powerful call to Washington, D.C., letting them know that North Carolina wants an end to this genocide, that these are not our values. Imagine if hundreds of city councils around the U.S. passed ceasefire resolutions. I imagine the president and White House might feel compelled to listen. I imagine that you all might want to be one of those city councils that ended a genocide. I am disappointed that we have to turn out to work session after work session to demand that y'all take a stance on genocide. We should be disagreeing about the discrepancies of zoning policies in the city budget, not whether or not Palestinians should be killed en masse. As Leslie pointed out, Gaza is a moral litmus test. If you will not stand to end genocide, what will you stand
Thank you
for?
so much. Thank you so much, Blue.
Thank you.
Next up, I have DeWarren Langley. DeWarren, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you so very much. On behalf of the Board of Directors, staff, scholars of the Charles Hamilton
DeWarren,
Houston Foundation.
DeWarren, do you
Yes.
mind speaking just a little clearer into the mic? It's a bit muffled.
Yes. Is that better?
A bit better.
Okay. On behalf of the Charles Hamilton Houston Foundation, I would like to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for proclaiming January as National Mentoring Month. The Charles Hamilton Houston Foundation is dedicated to fostering the academic leadership and professional development of boys and young men of color. Our mission is to provide a comprehensive continuum of strategy-centered, skill-based, and career-focused programs, services, and mentorship that go beyond theoretical knowledge, emphasizing a practical and strategic approach to prepare our participants for academic success and success in the competitive workforce. At the core of our initiatives is strategy-centered methodology. We believe in the power of carefully devised plan of action to achieve specific goals. Our programs involve a meticulous analysis of the current educational and professional landscape. We work to set priorities, make informed decisions, and allocate resources to maximize the chances of success for the boys and young men of color that we serve. On average, the young men who complete our career pathway program graduate college and secure career-oriented employment, earning $66,479 on average. That is how you transform the lives of boys and young men of color. This guidance helped them navigate their career path, make informed decisions, and to work towards achieving their professional goals. The reason I'm here today is because as you all begin to embark on your budget deliberations, we need the city of Durham to be a partner with us in this work. My volunteerism, along with the other volunteers with this organization, is not enough. We need additional resources to expand the programming that we offer, implement the programming and services that we provide, and really continue to make transformative impacts in our community. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. Next person I have is Virginia Bergman. Virginia, can you hear me? No, okay. Next I have, and lastly, I have Maya Yanam. Maya, can you hear me?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, so I've been to the past few work sessions and city council meetings in December. And from what I understand, the Durham City Council wants to write their own resolution for a ceasefire, and that they will be having a private meeting to discuss this. But I have not heard anything about a timeline during that meeting. Some transparency on how long this would take would be really beneficial, especially given the urgency of what is happening in Palestine right now. I sent y'all an email over the break, and I did get a response on behalf of Caballero, basically saying that there would be a small group of community members who have perspectives on this issue that will come together with the city council to make this resolution. I'm wondering who those community members are and how they're being chosen. And I'm seeing that it will happen this week. So I appreciate the email. Thank you very much. But again, transparency in regards to how this resolution is being drafted and how long it will take would be very beneficial. I also understand that the council would not want to adopt a resolution because it would set a precedent for other organizations to submit their resolutions. I'm personally not really seeing the issue with that because the city council still has the power to approve or decline those resolutions. So I still think that UE 150's resolution would be very beneficial to at least look at if you're going to draft your own resolution. Finally, I wanted to say that at the last work session, it was lovely to see the survivor care work that is happening, and to hear from Alan, who is a community member that I've met in the past few weeks. I did want to say that Mayor Williams and Mr. Middleton, your comments on there needing to be front-end work in terms of gun violence, and then claiming that ShotSpotter would be one of those, is very misleading. Policing is not preventative work. Actually, healthcare programs like HEART is. So I would ask that you please do not try to mislead anyone into thinking that policing is preventative work. Instead, raising city worker wages would be, for sure. So once again, I'm asking for more transparency on the ceasefire resolution and for preventative care in our communities. It's not policing. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you for your comments and opinions. And I will be addressing that process right after all of the comments today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, this is in person. All right, we'll now move to in-person comments. The first I have is Maria Garlock. Thank you. If you can state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Dr. Marie Garlock. I am a 16-year resident of Durham, married to an 18-year resident of Durham who is a local business owner, has brought jobs here. We've paid our taxes. In all of that time, we're also parents to a 2.5-year-old child, and I speak from that place. I'm also an educator of medical students and professionals who have been horrified by what is happening for healthcare workers and healthcare providers in Gaza and beyond, in Palestine as well as in Israel. And I'm coming here to speak about 3 things: money, ethics, and the change that we can make here amidst trauma repeating itself over and over and over again. And we have heard from people on all sides of this about the trauma that is repeating itself over and over again, and there are very practical ways that this council can intervene and make tangible steps. So I want also to orient us to 3 ways of thinking. I grew up as Methodist, and I have been holding the Luke 2, 1-20 story of Christmas that I grew up doing as biblical storytelling as a child. And I bring that place of faith here, not as something that should be interwoven with the state, very clearly, but as something that gets us to orient to children who are persecuted and pursued by state violence and displaced right now in Gaza and beyond. When Mary was pregnant and needed a place to give birth to her child, there was no room for them at the inn. When angels came to them and said, "Glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace among all those whom God favors," I know that each of you, whether you are oriented to a divine or something else that is larger than you, that inspires you in your ethical compass, know that includes all human beings. And what we are dealing with here is a hierarchy of life. When 1,200 to 1,400 people killed in Israel and nearly 30,000 people killed in Gaza and the West Bank are held unequally, why are so many tens of thousands of people considered to be acceptable collateral damage for others' deaths? Why are these innocents considered to be acceptable collateral damage for others' deaths? We've got to intervene on that logic in our own communities here in Durham, in the ways that brutality and state violence happen against our people because they are Black and brown and poor, when that happens in those ways. And we've got to intervene on that violence happening in a global way because our money is funding it. There are 3 ways of thinking that a Baptist preacher, Brian McLaren, talks about. There's 1/3 of us who have an orientation to be progressive, to look for the helpers, to intervene when violence is happening. There's 1/3 of us who respond to stress and trauma by saying, there's got to be law and order, there's got to be blood in the streets. Doesn't matter who's killed. There's 1/3 of us who are a swayable middle, who can listen and be moved, and we ask for you all to be that bridge. We ask for you to be that bridge for a permanent ceasefire resolution now, and to hold in your hearts the children that you may hold every night or have held in your life, knowing that you give thanks to God for their safety and that they are not in white body bags in your arms instead.
Thank you so much. All right, next up we have Mo Brady. And after Mo, we're going to have Victor Iquiza. Thank you. Please state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Mo Brady. I live in Durham, zip code 27707. I'm so glad to have an opportunity to directly address so many of those I voted for in the last election. And I ask you to adopt a resolution calling for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. I think the horrific violence being inflicted on the Palestinian people since the Nakba in 1948 speaks for itself. And in fact, it doesn't just speak for itself, it screams. This violence has been ongoing for decades, not since October 7th. And Durham has a moral responsibility to end our complicity in genocide. I believe you have the moral responsibility as our representatives to end the flow of support and tax dollars to this relentless violence. I ask you to see each of the 22,000 people murdered and thousands more missing and mutilated as your siblings on this earth. Despite what some may say, Innocent people do not deserve to die, and the citizens of Durham deserve a city that is working towards a better world, not supporting ethnic cleansing with our tax dollars. In this profoundly interconnected world that we all share, there is no such thing as disconnection from our duty to one another as human beings throughout the world. There is no reality where ethnic cleansing and indiscriminate slaughter makes a society more safe. Genocide against one people will never create safety for another. Grounded in knowledge of this fact, I ask you to please ally the City of Durham with organizations such as Amnesty International, the United Nations, the World Health Organization, Doctors Without Borders, UNICEF, and the municipality of Carrboro, North Carolina, in calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. I remind you that the end of apartheid in South Africa began with grassroots movements and with universities and cities agreeing to divest and boycott. I ask you to please adopt or write your own a ceasefire resolution immediately. Thank you.
Thank you so much. After Victor, which you will have 3 minutes, we will have Jasmina Nogo. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Victor, and I live in Durham. I work as a workers' rights organizer with Unite for a Fair Economy, and I'm also a member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I came here today to ask the Durham City Council to pass the ceasefire resolution presented by UE 150 and endorsed by over a dozen labor and community organizations. Since October 7th, Israel has killed over 22,000 Palestinians, including over 10,000 children. These numbers are likely to be much higher as thousands of bodies remain underneath the rubble. Israel's indiscriminate campaign has displaced over 1.9 million people. Over 1 million Gazans are now starving, as reported by the UN World Food Program. 95% are lacking clean drinking water, and the few remaining hospitals that Israel hasn't bombed are on the brink of collapse. We demand that City of Durham representatives stand in clear support of the implementation of international law without exception. It is crucial that you pass a permanent ceasefire and no aid to Israel resolution, demanding that Congress and the executive branch hold Israel accountable to international law and human rights. As Durham residents, while we are sending $4.3 million in taxes annually to Israel's military, while North Carolinians send over $91 million. While I understand that this city council has no control over the allocation of federal tax dollars, this is even more reason to pass a ceasefire resolution. It is your moral, legal, and ethical duty to not remain silent as our tax dollars fund genocide and ethnic cleansing. We need to invest our resources into programs that alleviate violence. We need to improve the quality of life for all Durham residents. This means spending to improve access to food, healthcare, emotional and mental health support, and housing. The kids in our city deserve to have fun and affordable after-school and summer programs. We need a $25 minimum wage for city workers. Invest in our workers and communities here and divest from war and attack on black and brown people here and across the world. In 1981, the Durham City Council passed a boycott resolution opposing South African apartheid, so this whole notion that cities cannot make resolutions on international affairs is false. Many prominent academics, political scientists, diplomats, and political leaders have stated that the apartheid system of Israel is much worse than the apartheid of South Africa. No one in their right mind here will refuse to condemn South African apartheid. So why is it so controversial when it comes to Israel? How is the mass murder of innocent Palestinians paid with our tax dollars a controversial stance? Please explain this to me. I can't wrap my head around this, okay? Why has there not been a ceasefire resolution by the Durham City Council after almost 3 months of war crimes and atrocities? Over 28 cities, I think it's 32 now actually, across the country have passed a ceasefire resolution. Over 64 members of Congress have called for a ceasefire, and over 150 countries voted for a ceasefire at the UN. If you refuse to pass this ceasefire resolution, which is a bare minimum, you will also have blood on your hands. Free Palestine, call for a ceasefire now. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Right after you, we'll have Marion Lambert. You have 3 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Yasmina Nogo, and I have been a resident of the city of Durham since I fled the Bosnian genocide in 1996. I was 10 years old, and I was lucky. I think you all agree with me that no child, no human should ever have to suffer the kind of harm that war inflicts. I'm standing here before you today as the Israeli Defense Force, one of the most powerful militaries in the entire world, attempts to obliterate an entire community of unarmed and indigenous people by bombing schools, hospitals, residential buildings, and refugee camps. It has been nearly 3 months since the genocidal escalation of the war on Palestine. More than 30,000 Palestinians have been killed as of today, and that number doesn't include those bodies that haven't been found beneath the rubble. I'm asking you to see each of those people as our own people. Those children, those grandparents, those parents, those lovers, those doctors, those artists, those friends, those dancers, those basketball players, those Palestinian babies and those Palestinian elders, they are our children. Their breaths are our breaths. They are human and they deserve to live. We, as residents of Durham, as United Stations, as taxpayers, are not only witnessing this genocide, but we are the direct aiders and abettors of this war. Our hands are dropping those bombs on those Palestinian parents who, just like you and me, deserve to kiss their children goodnight and know that when they wake up, they will still be there. Can you imagine? I'm asking you to imagine, to actually feel in your body what it must be like. And I'm asking you to do something about it. How can we go home tonight to our families, to our friends, to our children? How can we eat food with them, sleep in a home with them, tell them we love them, knowing that there are human kin in Gaza who are never going to get to do that again? I still feel the reverberations of war in my body, and it's been almost 30 years since I survived. I still have dreams about what it feels like to be hungry, what it feels like to be afraid of losing my parents every single day. Every second, every minute, every hour that we allow for this to continue is colossal and contributes to a lifelong, intergenerational, and dire harm. We are the ones who can do something about this, and it is our responsibility. I'm asking you to refuse to go home tonight without doing something. As one of your constituents, as someone who volunteered for some of your campaigns because I was excited about your promises, I implore you to do the bare minimum and to adopt a ceasefire resolution to end the genocide of Palestinian people in Gaza. As a city that is so proudly made up of immigrants, of Black and brown revolutionaries, of workers, all of whom deserve to be adequately compensated.
Thank you for your time.
I ask you to do the right thing with your heart.
We have Marion Lambert. Marion Lambert, yep, you have 3 minutes. Thank you for joining us. If you will, just state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Marion Lambert. I emailed this morning to Ms. Schreiber to request that my daughter and I come to speak. So I would like to defer my time to my daughter because the issue is directly. Now, we have sat through an hour and 15 minutes of everything. I can't.
As you're speaking and I'm listening, I'm trying to refer to our procedures on whether I can defer your time to someone who didn't sign up.
I'm sorry, I'm really impaired.
I'm sorry. What I was saying was I was referring to our procedures to determine whether I can defer your time to someone who did not sign up.
Ms. Schreiber?
Okay, so we don't defer time, but she can speak if she did sign up.
She signed up.
Right. So you signed up and she signed up?
Both of them.
All right, so you have the floor at this time.
Okay. Will she come after me or?
Right. What is your daughter's name? Yep. So she'll be right after you. Yes.
All I want to say is my daughter would like to speak with you regarding the City of Durham's first-time home buyer assistance program. Please listen.
Thank you, Ms. Marion. Next, I have Blair Carrington. And if you could also state your name for the record, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you so much to the council. My name is Blair Carrington. I'm a long life resident of Durham County, more specifically District 5 here downtown. I have applied for several down payment assistance programs and first-time homebuyer programs through the city without any fruition. So my question is to the council, which I do have documentation that I can provide to you, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, that what is the status of the current down payment assistance program with the Durham, with the city of Durham, now offering, I believe, up to $80,000 of down payment assistance. I did apply back in 2022 when you guys were offering $20,000 worth of assistance. And of course, that program got shut down. And then once it was reinstated back in August of 2023, I applied once again. And I have not heard back from any city council members. I have emailed, I have called, I have not heard back from community development. I have emailed and I've called, and I've also emailed, called, everything with the approved lenders for the program. And I applied back in September of 2023, and now it is January 2024, and I have no status update of my application. Thank you.
All right, and during, just so you'll know, just during Citizen Matters, you've made it aware on record. We don't necessarily engage or respond back, but I'm sure staff heard you, and you see the guy over there waving his hand, go speak to him. We'll get you taken care of. Thank you. You're welcome. Next, I have Katie Crow. Thank you for joining us. I have Emily Wilkes after Katie Crow, and Ms. Crow, good to see you. If you don't mind stating your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Certainly, Katie Crow, and thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of City Council, for your committed service to our city, and to all of you who are here for your engagement in civic process. I speak only for myself today, bringing the vantage point of a person gutted by the horrors experienced by Israelis on October 7 and by Palestinians since. Speaking as a pastor who at once stands in a denomination that advocates for Palestinian rights and who sits at the feet of a Jewish community as senior pastor of Trinity Avenue Presbyterian, a congregation that has close bonds with a local synagogue. As this body discerns its role and its voice in this global matter, I want to elevate the need to be agents of healing to traumatized communities here locally, many of whom stand in different places relative to this issue, all of whom need to know that Durham cares. There is a swath of the Jewish community that hears and calls for a ceasefire, a willingness to forfeit the lives of hostages, some of whom have Durham ties. They hear rejection of their pain, canceling of their experience, and concession to the powers that would see them annihilated and have been very nearly effective in the modern era, powers that hit home again 8.5 weeks ago. They fear that Durham will no longer be a safe place to call home amidst an already rising tide of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia that we must all work proactively against. Durham has a special sauce of community that is and can be our greatest asset in this crisis, if we are intentional in allowing it to be. A response that is sensitized to and holds space for historically and presently traumatized people in our Durham home will go far in not only helping us to heal real-time wounds and meet this terrible moment, but in strengthening our relational fabric so that we're all the more equipped to rise to meet the next one. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Next, I have Emily Wilkes. Thank you for joining us. You have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Emily Wilkes, and I'm the Associate Pastor for Public Witness at Trinity Avenue Presbyterian Church. And I'm not here to speak on behalf of the congregation that I serve, but as a citizen of Durham. It is my faith and conscience that leads me to call on this City Council to draft and sign a resolution calling for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza, immediate and sufficient aid to be allowed into Gaza, release of all hostages held in Gaza and the prisoners held without a trial in Israel, and an end to all U.S. aid and arms to Israel. First, I'd like to address why I think this is an appropriate matter to bring before City Council. We've heard some arguments that a City Council shouldn't be weighing in on international concerns. But not only is there a precedent in the boycott resolution that Durham City Council passed in opposition to South African apartheid in the 80s, but in an era when the federal government feels less and less responsive to the will of the populace and the average citizen's voice matters less and less, City Council is actually one of the last bastions of democracy. City Council represents the exhortation to think globally and act locally, among one of the last avenues that average citizens like ourselves can trust that our voices will be heard. City councils across the country have begun signing ceasefire resolutions. Our hope is that a critical mass of local gestures will ultimately convey to the White House that it has lost support for the continued backing of Israel's military, especially if those resolutions come from Democratic strongholds that serve as President Biden's base in anticipation of the 2024 election cycle. There is a particular role that city councils across the country can play in this moment, and I urge you to consider joining other city councils across the country and listening to the voices of the citizens that you serve. Second, following in that vein, it's important that the democratic process is followed here as well. I'm speaking both to the City Council and also to my fellow activists calling for a ceasefire. In the volatility of this moment, it's vital to remember that Israel is a state that was born in response to a genocide. And therefore, it is a central part of the Zionist story that this is a state that exists in order to protect Jews from another Holocaust. And as Naomi Klein, a Jewish pro-Palestinian author and activist, has said, if the way you talk about Israel makes Jews feel more afraid, you're messing it up. We need to be rigorous in fighting all forms of hate, Islamophobia, anti-Arab racism, anti-Palestinian racism, and anti-Semitism too. We need to not give into our own anger and inadvertently shore up the Zionist project with ways of speaking that make people unable to listen. This is an opportunity to build broad solidarity and not give supporters of Israel in our community reason to feel even more justified in their support of the state and to not feel alienated from their community for years to come. If or when you do decide to draft a resolution, my hope is that you will be similarly rigorous in combating all forms of hate. So, even beyond Gaza, violence in the West Bank is taking place in the West Bank despite Hamas having a limited presence in the territory. Israeli forces attacked a refugee camp. Bethlehem was hit. We're seeing Christ crucified.
Reverend, thank you so much for being with us, Reverend.
Thank you.
We appreciate your time. Madam Clerk, please be advised I'm assuming the gavel momentarily while His Honor is off the dais. The final card we have is for Ricardo Correa, if he is here. Good afternoon. Thank you for being with us, sir. You'll have 3 minutes if we'll just get your name.
Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. My name is Ricardo Correa, and I have lived in Durham for 20 years, and currently I live in District 1. I am the pastor of Ministerio Monte Sinai, and I speak only for myself as a concerned citizen of Durham and a local faith leader. I know some groups are asking for you to weigh in the Middle East politics, and I ask, please don't. There's no need to get involved, either symbolic or not. About 8 weeks ago, I witnessed 45 minutes of footage of the atrocities that Hamas did on October 7th. While watching this footage, some were crying, others praying in lower voice, and most surprised for the barbaric images that we were witnessing. Like, for example, I saw a woman, she was pregnant, and her womb was cut open, and the baby was beheaded. I saw that image. As a man of the cloth, I come with a humble spirit, stating that this petition to get involved in international matters is completely out of the scope of the practice of this governmental body. Please consider the issues that really matter. You know last year's gun violence numbers. For example, half of 2023, the shootings increased by 20% of youth. You know the gentrification is taking place, the issues that in our schools where students are stabbing each other. Other community needs to be focused on local matters. Stay focused on what really matters, our lives, our children's, our home. I'm going to say some names, and if any of you know these individuals, please raise your hand. Anthony Feaster, 17 years old. Nicole Bullock, 29 years old. Mario Canceso Lopez, 23 years old. Angel Canales, 16 years old. Osmar Banega, 16 years old. Jose Manuel Casares Murillo, 64 years old. You know who were they? People that were killed last year. Jose Manuel, he used to sell hot dogs on the street in Durham. If you don't know your citizens and you don't know that they've been killed, we should be concerned about that. I do pray for the peace between Israel and Palestine, especially Gaza. I pray for the peace. I engage in community conversations, but I don't impose myself or any matter to distract you, elected officials, from what the cities of Durham elected you to do, to keep us safe and prosper. Please stay focused and work toward our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll yield back to the mayor.
Okay, I'll just make a few comments real quick. So thank you all for your comments today. Obviously, the ceasefire matter has been at the top of many of our minds. I will say that if you all have sent an email recently, please have grace with the council as we received thousands of emails, and we're not a council where that just goes in a junk folder. We are literally working and having to sort. Can't respond to everything, but we try to communicate amongst one another as much as possible, and we try and respond as much as we can. If you've sent an email, we got it. If you've sent an email about another matter, you have not received a response, just have a little grace as we are trying to get to it. But in regards to this matter, I think that it's appropriate for me to say something at this time. There are a few things about leadership that I've learned. One is sometimes you have to make decisions that will affect the people really close to you that you care about, and it may make them upset. And that is the same as people who may not even know you. Another thing is you're never going to make everyone happy. Another thing I've learned is, action is necessity. It's a necessity. You have to take action. You have to do something. And so part of leading this council, I could easily just take one email and respond and say, this is how we're going to move. And there's 1,000 others that's saying the other thing. Or I can go one email from the other side and there's 1,000 that's saying another thing. There is no, just because you come here or you sign up or you say something to us and say, I voted for you, this is what I expect of you. There's just as many saying the same thing. So what you have to do is you have to trust that we're going to do what we can, do the best we can, and you'll have a choice how you want to engage with that decision moving forward. But that is our reality. Now, as I'm listening, as I've said before, I have my personal preference. I've talked to my colleagues. We have varying views or approaches on how we should address this. And what I've done is I've asked people who I've engaged with on one side of this issue. I've asked people that I've engaged with on the other side of this issue. And I've engaged with people that are just in the middle, that are really focused here in Durham, as I believe all people are. And what I've done is I've asked a small group of people, and when we meet next week, and it's taken a little time, everyone has agreed to actually meet. And when we meet next week, we're going to have a small group conversation. I'm going to ask that group, hey, would you like to allow me to publicly announce you? Some people have already said they're fine, but I want to give grace to that group and allow us to sit down and actually talk. I chose to bring this group together because this group is going to advise me on how I'm going to approach this with my colleagues. And then we're going to do what we need to do amongst one another to respond to this issue. And that is how I'm choosing to do it. And I think that is the best way to do it. And it may not make everybody happy. That is not why I was elected. But trust me, the advocacy on this issue is just as loud on all sides. And that is not saying one way or the other. but I am asking you, just please let us have a little time so that we can respond. But as I said, when we do respond, it will come from this council. It would not be authored by anyone else. Okay? And at this time, thank you. At this time, we are going to move on with the agenda. We have 3 pulled items. Item number 3, 7, and 12. And it's all important stuff. You guys don't have to leave. All right. Item number 3, it was pulled by a resident as well as myself. I pulled this item simply because I wanted to address it. Colleagues, I've already spoken with you all about it, for most of you, but I also wanted to make sure we have it on the record. This item ended up on the agenda just by a little miscommunication. The process to bring items on the agenda is we all deliberate amongst one another whether we would like to add it to the agenda, and then we'll discuss it, and then we'll take action on it. As I was asking about clarification on this and the process of getting things to the agenda, I think that it was miscommunicated and it was placed on the agenda without full consent of everyone. It's nothing really controversial about it, at least in my opinion. I do agree with it and stand in solidarity with it. It is a matter that addresses here at home, but I did not want to take action on this without one, following that process, and I just want to hold true to that. If we're okay with addressing this today, we can move it to GBA. We can go ahead and just have it in the regular process, or just out of respect of the process moving forward, I can, just have it moved on. It's up to you all. Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just a little confused. I hear what you're saying, that usually we bring it informally and then the language is provided so we have a chance for feedback. I think that's the only piece that I would want, is the space to provide feedback on the language. So however that works logistically is fine, but normally we send the language so folks have that opportunity as colleagues, since it's a resolution and not a proclamation, which is your purview.
Right. So would we like more time, or would we?
I would like just to be able to send feedback on.
Okay.
To your point, I don't think it's controversial, but there's, I think that it merits, like, ACE is in there. A lot of folks don't know what ACEs are, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. I can ask for them, just ask.
Thank
you. GBA, okay.
Mr. Mayor, I want to affirm those comments and also ask just a simple question. This may just be semantics. Is this a resolution or is it a proclamation?
It would be a resolution. Yeah, it would be a resolution, which means we actually would take a vote on it.
Thank you.
You have a comment?
Verifying it would be on the next work session.
Yeah, it could be on the next work session, or it could be in, I think if we did GBA, then we'll be discussing it as is. Next work session, we'll be able to make some language adjustments. So next work session is probably the best. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, and I'll reach out to the person who submitted it. All right.
Mr. Mayor, can I just clarify so we can move from this, since we're having this conversation? Typically, what would happen is kind of what Councilmember Rist and Baker did during comments, bringing either an item or a resolution saying, hey, I would like to bring X, whatever that is. If there's a thumbs up, then and often we'll discuss, because staff has to fit that within their work on a work session. I'm saying this for the benefit of new colleagues. Then the forthcoming work session date is decided. Draft language is provided as that work session, or for that work session agenda, and then if it moves forward, it just shows up as part of the consent agenda. That's typically how it's done. So I'm just sharing that time, or that process for our new council members. Thank you.
They're online. Letitia Faison, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, did you just hear the discussion from us?
Yes, you said next work session.
Okay, would you mind coming back to speak with us at that time?
That's fine.
Okay, I really appreciate that. And
Thanks
sorry
for
about the
allowing me.
confusion. We're figuring this out. All right, thank you so much. Colleagues, we will move on. Item number 7, Councilmember Baker.
Actually pulled this item for a similar reason as that Councilwoman Caballero spoke up about earlier, which is just to highlight the enormous amount of money that's going to repaving and sidewalk projects. Something just to take note of, just because it's worth our time to think about. Infrastructure is extremely expensive, and sometimes these repaving projects, they're not always taking places on streets that desperately need them. And so I do think that it's an area where we can take a close look and apply some scrutiny. But I also think it's an important part. Obviously, this is one of those areas where when we have surveys conducted of the community, street repaving is one of the higher priorities that we hear from people. But I also think that the way that that question is asked is not necessarily weighing trade-offs between repaving streets and, for example, investing in homelessness services. So just something I wanted to highlight was the amount of money going towards these projects. And I was going to ask one question, but I think I'm actually going to ask it outside of the meeting because I don't think that we need to hear it here. So that's all that I have on this item. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next item I have is item number 12. Who pulled that? Oh, David Broadway. Okay, David Broadway, can you hear me? David, can you hear me?
Hello, can you hear me?
Hey, David, how are you? Thanks for joining
Hey.
us. You have 3 minutes.
Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of the council, my name is David Bradway. I've been a Durham resident since 2005. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm encouraged to see so many items on this agenda for sidewalk repairs, transit corridors, and Go Durham transit studies. I'm grateful to the council and staff for funding these and other infrastructure improvements in our budget. During the pandemic, I ran all 4,200 plus streets in the city of Durham, and I saw firsthand that many sidewalks are in bad shape. And I saw that many more sidewalks need to be constructed in neighborhoods that are most dependent on our transit system. I urge you to continue to increase funding and capacity to deliver these infrastructure projects, some that were outlined as far back as the 2006 and 2017 bike and walk plans. And that may come via an infrastructure bond or some other means, but there have been over $100 million in sidewalk repair projects already identified, so it's going to take continued effort to deliver these to people that need them. I want to also thank you for your recent vote to hold developers accountable to higher standards for transit opportunity zones and our approved comprehensive plan. Finally, I hope you will consider the responses to the supplemental surveys and questionnaires, both that you submitted and that Bike Durham submitted for the candidates for the Ward 3 appointment. They cover transit, working with NCDOT, housing, and climate. So thank you for serving the city and for your time today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Broadway, for joining us. There it is. All right, and now we have our presentation by the Finance Department, Equal Business Opportunity Program. We have allocated 30 minutes for this item. Don't feel like you have to take all of it, but you have 30 minutes. Thanks for joining us.
So good afternoon, Mayor Williams, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, and council members. I am Sheila Fawcett, the Deputy CFO, and I reside and work in the Finance Department. And today you will receive a presentation on the Equal Business Opportunity Program. So we're going to start with an abbreviation guide as a part of our agenda, the current overview of our current organizational chart and staffing, the purpose of the EBOP program. We're going to talk about disparity studies, goal setting, our fiscal year 2023 annual report. We'll have some vendor spotlights, a little bit of data, program improvement efforts that we are working on, and we'll talk about our 2024-2026 priorities, along with, we'll wrap it up with our midweek of 2023 celebration, and we'll have an opportunity for some questions as well. So I added an abbreviation guide because you may be familiar with some or none of some of the terms that I'll be using today. So I want to highlight just a few of those that I will most frequently speak on. And first is EBOP, and that's our Equal Business Opportunity Program. That is our city's race, gender, supplier diversity program. You'll hear me say HUB, which is historically underutilized businesses, and that refers to the North Carolina's certification program, as well as the database that houses the underutilized businesses for North Carolina. You will also see or hear me talk about MWBE, and that stands for Minority Women-Owned Business and Enterprise. And you will also hear SLBE, which is our Small Local Business Enterprise Program. And that's the city's program, which is a race and gender neutral supplier diversity program. And last but not least, you will hear UBC, and that refers to the Underutilized Business Compliance Division within finance. And that is the division that handles the administration of both those programs, which is EBOP and SLBE. So we want to start with the organizational chart and for EBOP, and it falls under the finance director's purview, Mr. Tim Flora. And also the administration or the day-to-day management of the program is part of my vertical as the deputy CFO. And UBC, it has 3 FTEs that actually do the day-to-day work in implementing the EBOP as well as the SLBE program. So here are the faces of UBC. Of course, you see me, the deputy CFO, and we have Sydney Anderson, who is our business services administrator, as well as Nathan Rivers, who is our business services analyst. We also have a UBC manager who is responsible for the administration of EBOP as well as SLBE, and that position reports directly to me. And it's currently vacant, but we are actively recruiting for that position. In the presentation, I also provided for you a link to the UBC website. I invite you to go there and learn a little bit more about UBC as well as our programs when you have the opportunity. So what is EBOP? So EBOP works to prevent discrimination and to maintain equal opportunities for historically underutilized businesses. And that's done by informing businesses of city contracting opportunities, providing information and assistance to those underutilized businesses as it relates to city procurement, practices, procedures, as well as bid specifications. It's done by setting MWBE participation goals for eligible contracts, and this is key, that are $30,000 or greater, and by evaluating bidders and contractors' achievement of those contract-specific goals, along with good faith efforts to meet those goals. By working with city departments to ensure prompt payments to our underutilized businesses, as well as to assess the compliance of those contract-specific commitments that those vendors will make, and by reviewing and addressing any complaints and suggestions along with the program, as well as collecting data to evaluate the program and any city contracting initiatives. So I'm providing for you today also a little bit of a timeline to go over some of the historical points as it relates to our EBOP program. And I wanted to start and go back to 2014, which is when we conducted our last disparity study along with the County of Durham. And in 2016, the City of Durham actually adopted a new ordinance. And in that ordinance, it was a part of those recommendations from that 2014 disparity study. In 2019, the Equal Opportunity and Equity Assurance Department became the Equity and Inclusion Department. And at that time, we created the Contracts and Compliance Division. In 2022, the Contracts and Compliance Division became UBC, and it moved over to the Finance Department so that we could have better coordination within the Purchasing Division. And in 2022, we created an interdepartmental work group to work on EBOP initiatives and improvements. So I also wanted to give you a little bit of a timeline on what we've been doing over the last year and some of those improvements. So in October of 2022, we started implementing those recommendations from the work group. And we also did a number of reporting enhancements for the program. Also in 2023, we reinstated the project management training, and where we bring those project managers in and we tell them what their responsibilities are as it relates to the EBOP program. We also, in 2023, reinstated the EBOP Steering Committee. That committee now meets on a quarterly basis, and they provide feedback and review our reports as it relates to the program and to make any recommendations to help us to continue improving EBOP. In September 2023, we actually published our first EBOP annual report, and you will hear, and I will outline a little bit more about that later in the presentation. And we also will talk about our 2024-2026 program priorities. We have a number of improvements that we're planning on the horizon, and we're going to highlight some of those of how we plan to go forward. So let's talk about disparity studies. What is a disparity study? A disparity study determines if inequities exist in public procurement and contracting that adversely affects disadvantaged businesses, minorities, and/or women. And it helps to ensure that any race or gender-based program can withstand scrutiny in a court of law. There's no mandated expectation of time between the studies, and those studies are usually handled or established every 5 to 7 years. The length of the study is really determined by the scope of the research, the condition and the availability of the data, and the scope of services and the number of entities that are involved. And a study will normally last about 12 months. And study requirements are based off a 1989 U.S. Supreme Court decision, and that decision imposed legal requirements to establish a compelling interest to support the establishment of actually having a minority and women business program. And the study results should determine if that compelling interest exists to have that particular supplier diversity program. That's why we do disparity studies. So I wanted to highlight our most recent disparity study, which was conducted in 2014, and it was conducted by Griffin and Strong, which was out of Atlanta, Georgia. And again, that study was together with the city and the county, and we had separate recommendations as well as analysis. And the study consisted of legal analysis, statistical analysis, data, and recommendations. And the objectives, there were two main objectives in that study, and one was to determine if the city or county has engaged or was engaging in discriminatory practices in the solicitation of award of contracts. And they're in those specific areas of construction, engineering, which is professional services, services and goods. And I'll highlight a little bit more about those later. And as well as determining if a legally justified need continued to exist in the city or in the county for a supplier diversity program, as set forth in those guidelines set by the Supreme Court. So goal setting. The City of Durham has aspirational goals for the EBOP program. Aspirational goals are not quotas, they're not set-asides, and the city sets those project-specific goals for eligible projects with a value of $30,000 or higher and it's based on the availability of the amount of certified minority and women contractors that are actually available to complete that scope of work. And so currently the goals that we have is for construction as a minority goal, it's 11%. The woman goal is actually 7%. For professional services, it's 8 and 6. Services, 7 and 5. And goods, we have a 2 and a 4% goal. So how do we set goals within the UBC team? How does UBC do their daily responsibilities? And so we set project-specific goals by the team will receive a project of scope from the project manager, and the UBC team will take that project scope and they'll go to that North Carolina Hub database and they will search UBEs in those 22 counties that can perform that scope of work that's been provided. The team will then validate to ensure that list is accurate, and then the team will set goals based on the number of opportunities within the scope and contractors that are available to do the work in each category. And then the team will actually go back to the department and they'll have those discussions, and if possible or if need be, they may be adjusted up or down based on the feedback from the project manager. So we're going to move into the fiscal year 2023 annual report. Again, that was the first time we've actually produced an annual report here at the city. And we had a few goals in mind when we did that, and we wanted to have transparency and accountability. We wanted to highlight improved data collection. We wanted to share process improvement stories, and we wanted to highlight important contributions of MWBE vendors. And I've also provided a link for you in the presentation to that report, and when you have the opportunity, I invite you to go and read a little bit more about it. So here's a vendor spotlight from the report that I felt it was very, very important that I highlight, and I'll quickly read it. 3 Oaks, Suzanne Young, 3 Oaks Engineering is grateful to the City of Durham for providing us with the opportunities as a women-owned hub and DBE vendor by establishing goals for hub and DBE participation in contracts and maintaining a list of certified firms for the use in requests for proposals. We have been approached by prime firms who may not have known of our business otherwise. And so why I really wanted to highlight that is because that explains or shows how important it is for the city to have the programs that we have. So I wanted to also talk about a little bit of the data in the report today. And the charts that you have before you represent prime and subcontractor MWBE payments from 2021 to 2023. While it is difficult to discern the trends because of the disruption from COVID-19, the data does show a decline in the MWBE payments for prime, but it also shows an increase in MWBE subcontractor payments. And we do, meaning we, finance, have plans to engage with those vendors to understand the barriers that they actually face when it comes to competing for those contracts. And we're going to use this data as a benchmark to make additional EBOP improvements. And I want to highlight and note so you'll know that when we're talking about EBOP, there's specific criteria for the EBOP. And This does not include any federal-funded contracts, any contracts less than $30,000, and other types of agreements. So we're really focused on just contracts that come from solicitations. So what has UBC been doing? And again, this slide highlights some of those improvements that we've made over the last year. We've improved our website. We've streamlined our reporting. We've reinstated the EBOP steering committee. And the picture that you have before you is actually the team at work in improving those forms, making their user-friendly, PDF fillable. And we're very proud of those improvements, and we will continue to move that process forward. So I'm going to talk about the 2024-2026 priorities. We have a number of items that we plan to do to improve this program. And one, again, is we're going to plan to focus on improving data collection and reporting. We're going to collect vendor feedback through surveys to see, again, how can we help and identify those barriers that minority vendors may be having in getting our contracts. Most importantly, and what you will see in the next couple of months, will be a new ordinance rewrite and review that we've been working on since November. And also, we're going to continue to enhance our outreach and business development. So I want to highlight our Minority Enterprise Development Week. Again, Med Week is a celebration of achievements and contributions for minority businesses. It takes place each October, and I provided a link to the video from our 2023 Med Week. And it was a celebration of keynote speakers, panels, networking, a luncheon, and a business expo. And we have a couple pictures there of the ribbon cutting. Also, Dr. Pettigrew was in the picture at the OEWE workforce panel that we had, a picture of our business expo, and of course, our wonderful mayor and deputy city manager is in a picture there when we were giving an award to one of our local vendors. So I'm going to conclude today. I hope I didn't take too much of your time, but this is my favorite picture from Med Week. It's really showed the celebration and all the hard work of the city and the county and the staff that we did to put together that wonderful event in 2023. And at this moment, I will take any questions that you may have.
Yes, thank you so much for your presentation. Madam Manager?
Thank you for a moment of privilege. I really would like to say thank you to Sheila. She is a fairly new employee, even though it doesn't seem that way with one of her first major presentations to City Council. But from this seat, I did want to appreciate her for being here today to make the presentation, but most importantly, for being a key leader in the improvement and forward-looking of our EBOP and SLBE programs. So thank you, Sheila.
Thank you, City Manager Page. Have a great day. Any other questions? Not rushing you.
Colleagues. All right, Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation, and I think it's a great framework to view the discrimination and practices that have been so long held in contracting. And I do think it's a good tool to have. I do want to ask if you felt there were gaps in how you could track your minority, your minority-owned business owners.
Yes, we do have some gaps in that, and that's why we're focusing on data collection. And in January, which is now, January, the team and I will be focusing on outreach to vendors, making sure that we have them coded properly in our system. We're going to be going out there and making sure, hey, you're in our system, but you're not showing that you're certified. We're going to reach out to them and see if we can't get them certified. So we have a number of initiatives that we're planning to move forward with to make sure that we can enhance our participation goals by just really making sure that our data is correct.
And then I wasn't sure if there's any tie-in to the federal study program with the socially economically disadvantaged initiative, but I feel like it's a cross-reference point that probably could be helpful, and it may need to have more conversations about it. But I do know that in addition to looking at historically underused or underutilized, there's also aspects of this that could kind of pick up in low-income folks as well, so that we're tracking that. And then just specifically where minority women are specifically, if you're not tracking it, you're not going to be able to tell us whether or not we're discriminating or not against minority women. And I do know that that's a specific area that has always been pinged, that I always ping in these conversations, because it is, it is specifically for women, and that is white women. That does not include women of color. And outside of that, I do want to understand if we're staying at 11 and 7%, how that is determined and when that determination will be shifting.
Right, so those goals were a little bit higher from the disparity study. It's really a basis of the disparity study. They make recommendations based on the analysis that they've actually done to determine where the disparity is. Okay. So when we actually do our new rewrite, which will be coming before you, we will be assessing the goals at that time. And if we can determine that we can increase or decrease those goals, we will go from that point at that time.
Will there be an opportunity to increase the goals or increase the type of goals so that there are specifically calling out minority women-owned businesses?
One moment, Madam Manager.
I wanted to kind of respond to that because one of the, in looking at the evaluation of the current ordinance and the rewrite, all of those considerations will be taken into consideration. But because we actually use the Commerce's hub database, we are, we may not have specific information that is not collected by the hub database in order to classify the vendors. So we want to make sure we look really closely at that. We're not taking anything off the table, but whenever a business is hub certified, whatever they provide or what we can glean from that certification is really what we can use in our programs.
Thank you, and that does kind of give a precursor to the reason I asked the question, is because it would be nice to make sure that in our legislative agenda we include that request that our hub databases actually include minority women-owned businesses, not just limiting it to minority. And I would also say that there's probably an opportunity for more than just women-owned. It's also people with disabilities and people with language access concerns. So that's where that kind of steady conversation comes in. And I think that there's a lot there to broaden to than where we were 10 years ago. So that's all.
And the hub database does include all of those. They are all in that database.
Currently?
Currently, they are in the hub database.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rist.
Ms. Fawcett, first of all, thank you for the presentation. Really appreciate your sharing that information. And I want to just for the council, as you all know, I spent a career in economic development before taking this job. And this issue of ensuring that our contracting practices provide equal opportunity to historically underutilized businesses is a critical tool in our economic development tool case. So this is actually a critical tool, and I appreciate the update you've shared here and the work you're doing. So I just have a couple of questions. So one is that the disparity study you referenced that's the basis of these goals in this program was in 2014. And you noted that those sort of best practices every 5 to 7 years to redo that. So we're 10 years past that old disparity study. Are we due to renew our disparity study, or what's the plan for making sure that we have that documentation to justify the work we're doing?
Yes, we are working on that now. We're planning to, on the horizon, to work towards a new study. I was going to say, how would you like me to respond to that one? I'm going to let Director.
I'll jump in and respond. So yes, so we are working on a budget request for a new disparity study, but one of the things that Sheila had pointed out was improved data collection. And so the importance of getting a good disparity study would be having the good data to support the conclusions of that study. And we are working hard to ensure that the integrity of our data is going to be there for when we actually get to a new study. So what I will say, a disparity study is on the horizon for what we are looking at. We are just working to make sure that once we get to that point where we want to contract with someone, that we are going to have the data that is needed for that study.
Great, thank you. So my second question, thank you, is so thanks for the goal setting. I guess my question was, how are we doing against those goals? And you referenced something about assessing our goals, so is that still in process, or do we know how we're doing?
Yes, we have room for opportunity there. And again, that surrounds our data set that we are improving. So we have opportunities for improvement, and I have a number of areas like increasing the number of vendors in our program and updating our ERP system so that we can capture and make sure that we are meeting those goals and exceeding them.
But you don't have the data right now?
No, I do not have that readily available other than the charts that I have provided for you.
Yeah.
However, we can get that information back for you.
That'd be would love to see that data, yeah. And the last thing is, this sort of picks up on Councilwoman Freeman's questions about the gaps. I just want to ask the question again. So what if we're not potentially meeting the goals, what do we need to do to improve this and make sure we're hitting our goals? Is it both an issue of making sure we do outreach to vendors? Does it mean actually trying to encourage new folks to enter different fields that have opportunities to be vendors? So what
A little bit of all of that, again, is one, improving our data, because we believe that we have a lot of more minority participation. It's just us actually making sure our data is correct. We plan to do more outreach to those vendors, and if they are not certified, get them certified, because that's key. We can't count you in our numbers unless you're a certified vendor. So you can be a minority vendor with the city, but unless you're certified based on our ordinance, unless you're certified through that hub database or North Carolina DOT, we can't count you in our reporting. So it's key to get those vendors certified, get them updated in our system, and we'll be doing that through outreach with vendor surveys. So again, we have a number of priorities on the horizon so that we can make sure that we are increasing our participation with minority vendors.
Great, thank you. This is a big priority, so I appreciate the presentation. I look forward to hearing more as the project gets more data and we can learn more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to thank Councilmember Riss and Councilmember Freeman for their great questions. Congratulations on a really brilliant entry into this world, this orbit here in the City of Durham government, and for a great presentation today. I'm going to thank Councilmember Riss for his inquiry about a disparity study. I think I know what it's going to show when we do the next disparity study. So much so that I want to kind of create a corollary between this and another effort that we've got underway here in Durham. Our Shared Economic Prosperity Plan and our Built to Last program, which is directly aimed at this same target. On the outside, there's some, obviously for legal reasons, there's things we can't do with our money internally, so we've set up this not-for-profit, and I hope to be hearing about their progress sometime this year. So I guess my question is, is there overlap? Do you communicate with our folk who are doing shared economic prosperity for the city, and is there goal sharing? Is there overlap or duplicating? If this, if this question is far afield, just let me know. But, or staff, yeah, sure, whoever.
Madam Manager.
So I would just say, Sheila's going to respond to that, but who you see in this audience today is very few people, but you do see our Mr. Andre Pettigrew here as part of the team that is, part of the steering committee that we put together, and he's here, specifically to respond to questions, but the short answer is there is collaboration, and I wanted to jump in and recognize both Andre and Tim in the support of this work in the chamber today, but Sheila has the details, so.
City Manager Page said it all, really. Yes, we do collaborate with each other. We participated in events when it came to like the Med Week celebrations. He was a part of one of our panelists. So yes, we do collaborate on those efforts.
Sure. Tell me what the Built to Last is, where your border ends and they pick up, just to amplify a little bit on what they're doing, that the part that you're not doing, or where they complement you in a way that's different from what we're doing internally.
And I'm more on the compliance side and accounting and accumulating the numbers and increasing the minority businesses.
Good to see you, man.
Andre Pettigrew, the Director of the Office of Economic and Workforce Development. Thank you for the question, and thank you for your interest on this topic. Again, as the head of the Office of Economic Development, it is important that our businesses be able to access the city as a market. And while my work oftentimes involves a lot of the external corporate and other areas, this particular effort that Sheila and Tim are controlling is really about how we participate in that. In terms of where Built to Last and other economic development agencies begin and end, is that, again, they are out providing technical assistance and outreach. They are engaging mostly other corporate organizations to stimulate that market. Again, we have far less access or control to that market. And so when other advocacy organizations and service providers are doing outreach, they help us by generating opportunities in that broader category. And guess what? Those firms can also serve us. And so, again, one of the big things that I'm interested in as the head of the Office of Economic Development is how we raise the capacity and outreach and market supply for all of our businesses. And again, Built to Last is an organization that's focused in on that broader area.
Absolutely, and I hope that the work will directly reflect in some of that data we start collecting in terms of who we're contracting with as a city. Good to see you always. Happy New Year to both, and really excited about this work. This work really will be, it doesn't get as much attention as some other things, but this is really where the transformative part of the work is done, where we get all of our residents participating in the wealth that is Durham. And Durham is doing well. It's just not everybody's participating in it. So we want to make sure that happens. His Honor's left the podium for a moment. Madam Clerk, I'm assuming the gavel. Again, I want to thank my colleagues that have gone so far. I yield to any other colleagues. Questions, comments? Councilmember Caballero. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the presentation. It did not seem like it was your first presentation to council, so wonderfully done. I had a couple questions, and it's going to be for both for you and for OEWD. I want to thank my colleagues because I had the disparity question as one, so thank you. And then I was curious who all is on the steering committee?
Oh, we have about 22 people. Let's see, we have our...
If you want to just send it
okay,
to email, that'd be great.
But we have a collaboration of the departments, OEWD, let's see, General Services.
Is it all internal, or are there any folks who are...
They're all internal.
Okay.
Right now, they're all internal.
Okay. I think my next question, so there's a couple questions, and I'm hearing a little bit of it, and I know Andre and I have had these conversations a lot. You know, OEWD does the outward facing. It's getting folks to build capacity. It's helping them with their certification so that they can even bid on government contracts. And so I just want that, like, basically I see it as a pipeline. We help people on the outside, but we also are providing an avenue for them to make money with our city dollars. And I think that in many cases, that is because we have these goals and the market outside doesn't necessarily have those goals. It's a really, it has the potential to really help us meet that goal of shared economic prosperity. And obviously, as an immigrant and Latina, I'm particularly interested in what are we doing, and it's conversations that I think some of you have had with some of our community members, some of our Latino-owned businesses. How are we ensuring that that pipeline is happening? How are we providing culturally competent expertise that's multilingual potentially, and especially if we know it's like family-owned, first generation is retiring, second generation wants to really level up. And so then what are we doing to get those folks to be able to level up?
So, Councilwoman, you know that we last year put together a Hispanic Entrepreneurs Advisory Committee. And again, that was to provide the set of relationships and infrastructure to better serve that community. And we meet monthly with them. And it has ramped up our outreach effort in terms of culturally competent communications. Our website is bilingual, And when we talk about culturally competent, what we want to do is make sure that we're establishing a trusted relationship in delivering the information, because business is about trust. On that advisory board, we have the president of the Hispanic Contractors Association, and the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce for North Carolina has joined the committee, as well as El Centro and the Latino Credit Union. We have some of the strongest organizations to help guide us in better serving the Hispanic business community. They are giving us really an opportunity to build a strong, competent relationship, which I think is the most important from a long-term standpoint. We did do a bidding, how to bid workshop for Hispanic contracting companies during the 22-23 fiscal year. And again, we'll continue to do that, and in doing so, we will always partner with those types of organizations, particularly in the Hispanic community, to move that forward.
Thank you. I really appreciate that information. And I look forward to further updates, and then the lessons learned as we are seeing increases in other high language use groups, that the lessons learned within the Latino community can then be applied. I will say that one place that I hope we build some deeper relationships with is within the immigrant, well, hopefully, Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs, which is, housed in the county. And so that when folks go there, that we are tightening up that alignment within the city and the county. We want everyone to do well. I think everybody, and we have to rise to that occasion of pivoting so that everyone can do well. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Freeman?
Thank you. I do appreciate the bilingual aspect of it, but I do think it's important to highlight the culturally competent side of it and making sure that it's not limited to just Spanish. I will repeat again, Spanish is not the only language Hispanic folks speak or Latino folks speak. And then also there are folks who is French speaking and then Muslim, Arab speaking. There are a multitude of languages that have to be covered, and which is why I said women of color. It's not just Black women. There are women who are in business who are not getting the supports that they need, and I feel a whole responsibility around that as a woman of color in business. And so that socially, economically disadvantaged initiative that I talked about is specific. I think if we were to look at and target in our next disparity study, who we're talking to that have businesses under $30,000. If that aspect of what we're doing around goals could be spelled out, I'll just say in advance, that's the level of detail that I think we have to get to actually get to the population of people who are in business that are discriminated against.
And again, we'll work with finance to make sure that, we get to the level of detail, and I'm sure bring it back to you guys as we move forward to set those relationships and build those opportunities, successful opportunities.
Yeah, so I feel confident that the compliance of where we are from 2014, we're getting there. And then what I'm concerned about is that we're not yet identifying those other areas that are there. And so yes, a disparity study will be helpful to have, but there are things we know right now, like there are women in business who are not English speaking, who need supports. And how are we as a city identifying those groups, whether it's through Built to Last or shared economic prosperity, so that they actually do have access because they are in the HUB database. And if our database is not matching the HUB database, I have a lot more questions, because that's kind of what I heard, which is what I'm going to follow up on. Thank you.
Okay.
Councilmember Caballero?
Yeah, this is just in general, basically, a few weeks ago, and this is not pertaining to y'all's presentation per se, but a few weeks ago we had a Latino-owned, a younger man who I think his father was a drywaller, and now they were getting into development. And local folks, kids had gone to Riverside, and I want to make sure that those kinds of folks are getting the support that they need with public dollars, and that's not an anomaly. That in the 6 years that we've done, that I've been doing rezoning cases, I think that's the only one where somebody's shown up as the actual applicant. that is just how we do business in Durham, that is not a rarity. And I think that applies to several different groups that we can name. So I think that when I think about this work, that's what I want to know is happening. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, colleagues, are we all clear? All right, thank you all so much. Is that all board items, everything? All right, now we have to do the discussion of the Ward 3, right? Yeah. All right. All right, next up, and I think this may be our final item before the closed session. So under other matters, we do need to address the Ward 3 process. And colleagues, you should have the schedule before you. Councilmember Caballero, would you like to lead us through this?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, everyone. I want to thank our city clerk and her staff, because I know that without them, we wouldn't be where we are, so thank you. I also just want to remind colleagues that at the conclusion of this, if you have not submitted a ballot, which you were provided a link, or if you need to change your ballot, please do so by 4 today, so that our clerk can have that. And then the final reminder is, our interview process is Monday at 7 p.m. So those are just kind of like the housekeeping items. Mayor Williams, sorry.
Yes, I have a monkey wrench for you.
Of course you do.
All right. I wanted to request ask our colleagues if you could look at your calendars to see if the morning of the 16th, I'd like to have us have a special session to discuss that, and to submit our final vote. It'll be quick. I will not be here that evening.
Oh, on Monday.
Well, you're saying the morning of the 16th, right? Yeah.
So we would move both the interviews and the supporter meeting, because we have the supporter meeting on the 10th.
We select the finalists on the 16th. Is that an actual actionable vote, or is it just an announcement?
That is how it's been done historically. The person is named and sworn in that night is what we've done historically, yes. But, and I think we can update it.
I just want to make sure we're all here.
You're also
I didn't realize I wasn't going to be here
No,
until.
that's fine. Are you also out of town on the 16th? Because if that would.
That's what I'm talking about, the day of the 16th, the 16th.
Oh, to that piece.
Yeah, I'll be here on the 16th in the morning, but not in the evening.
Okay, so for the vote for the vacancy, we would just, you're not asking to move everything next week?
No. I'm asking if we could come together to hold that, like it's a special meeting.
Can we manage to wrap it in the January 10th meeting? Is that what, because you'll still be here and we'll all be together?
That would, let's see, hold on a second.
That's a public comment, right?
Yes, the 10th is the opportunity for, we would maybe need to, I guess it depends if people need more time or not. That's the question that.
We could just take some time after discussing it, or the interviews, and then come back and make a decision.
We don't, the decision, like we can't leave and discuss all 7, right? Like we have to do that in open session. It's just whether people are going to be ready to make it. Like it could be, and I have no idea, it could be that you have the interview, you have the supporter meeting, and you need some time to think, but you're going to kind of be forced to make a decision. Then I don't.
So I
don't have an opinion one way or the other.
Today is January 4th. So we have January 8th, which will be the interview finalists. Today we're choosing the finalists to be interviewed. Then we interview them on the 8th. On the 10th, we'll conduct a public comment period. On the 16th, we actually make the final selection.
That is what we had originally.
Right.
So we could call a special meeting on the 16th. We could call a special meeting previously to the 16th if we wanted to.
We could, yeah.
I just don't know. I don't want to assume folks are going to be ready to make a decision Wednesday night. I feel like that might be a little much, but that's just my thought.
So I was, if you all could, we could do it that morning of the 16th, or we can do it another day after the 10th. It could be the day after. Any time between then, the 10th and the 16th. but I would, let's,
Does
it'll be great to take some time after we actually go through that whole process.
Does anyone have a problem with the 16th? Hold on, I'm sorry, let me pull up my own calendar before I open my mouth.
16th is the day after the holiday.
And that'll be Tuesday, the 16th. Well, because Monday is a holiday, so we're having a special scheduled council meeting that day.
Was there a time you were suggesting?
It could be 9 a.m.
And folks do 9? Everyone, can I just see, can I?
At 9:30?
9:30 is fine.
Okay, I have a 10 o'clock that I can move. That's fine. So can I just see everyone's thumbs? So we are saying that we are going to not make the decision at the meeting, the regular standing meeting at 7 p.m. We will have made the decision that morning, and so applicants will need to be informed.
So, Madam Clerk, to be clear, the 16th is being moved. That instead of making the decision at that meeting that night, it'll be that morning at 9:30.
We're going to have to call a special meeting because it's out of
It'll be a special
our
meeting, yeah.
normal, ordinary time. If I'm not mistaken. I'm getting a nod yes from the city attorney. Thank you.
Just a question, are we doing a ballot? Is it a ballot being submitted, or no?
We could do a ballot post the, oh, that's a good question. Thank you.
If we do ballot, do we need to be in person?
I guess,
Is that what you're about to ask?
no, I think we actually have to take an official vote, don't we, since it's an appointment? So we have to show up to vote, and we have to do it in person because we can't do it on Zoom.
Okay.
Okay. I appreciate you all.
Okay, so I'm just going to reiterate that because I want to make, we will be here in council chambers Tuesday, January 16th at 9:30 a.m. to take a formal vote on the appointment.
9:30.
9:30. Thank you. Okay.
Everything else stays the same.
Everything else stays the same. Yes, thank you. I'm going to,
Get a thumbs up?
yes, thumbs up. Okay, that is unanimous.
One last question. So we're going to submit, I've already submitted my choices. We submit those by 4 today.
Yeah.
But then what's the procedure by Madam Clerk? So we can choose between 3 and 7 people.
That's what we're going to discuss right now.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. So thank you, Councilmember Rist. Our next order of business is, A, we have to make a decision on how many, and council procedures is between 3 and 7. We could make a different decision. I think we have done between 3 and 7 every other previous round. So I think my first question is, does anyone have a number between 3 and 7 that they would like to interview? And then, I'm going to finish my thought before I call on you. Thank you. And then we'll go from there, because I think that'll affect people's ballots, correct? Okay. Does anyone have, Mayor Williams, your hand was up.
Yeah, no, I think this question came up last time, and we ended up choosing, I think we looked at the common, I think we allowed our ballots to determine, like, because we
So we're not predetermining, we're based on how many names we come up with?
But we can do it however you guys.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. Mayor. I think anybody who gets 4 votes, crosses the 4 votes threshold should just be, move on. And if you don't get 4 votes.
Then you don't move on.
Then you don't move on. That's my recommendation. Thank you.
Is everyone comfortable with that? I have a yes from Councilmember Baker. Yep, okay. So, Madam Clerk,
And is it possible that no one gets 4 votes?
yes, and then we will have to reballot.
And it is possible that someone gets 7 votes.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. I'm just wondering, just to avoid redoing the whole process.
I think there's going to be folks who get 4 votes. We'll list. So I think Madam Clerk has resent our link. I'm going to give us an opportunity. Everyone just take a moment and go ahead and submit if folks are, unless you already done it and you feel good about it.
I'm
Okay,
good.
I need to sit mine real quick. I came prepared to talk about it. I already know who I'm going to go with, so.
Are we taking a moment for you to do that?
Yes, we are. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Mr. Mayor? Mr. Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Would you like me to do the board and committee report while you're?
You know what? Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Let's do that.
All right, there was one nomination, and that's to the Durham City County Environmental Affairs Board. And the nomination is Anna B. Keeley. She is the youth category with a term to expire September 6, 2024. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I just had a question for the clerk. Is there a process that allows for the Environmental Affairs Board to submit their recommended applicant?
I believe they updated their bylaws
Okay.
to state that they would like to be making a recommendation.
Okay. Thank you.
But they did endorse the candidate, correct? Yeah.
Yes, they did.
We're just waiting on Councilmember Baker to submit his ballot, and then we'll be ready. Thanks.
All right, sounds good. We can just take a quick break, and we'll be back in about 5.
You want me to set the agenda?
We're in closed session. Okay. All right, let's, what we'll do is set the agenda, and then we'll take a break.
Thank
Madam
you.
Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. For your upcoming city council meeting, I have for consent items 1 and 2, and items 4 through 18, and GBA public hearings, items 20 through 22. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Manager. And I'll entertain a motion to settle the agenda.
Move to settle.
Second.
Been moved and properly second. All in favor, left hand up. Thank you. Madam Clerk has it recorded. All right, let's take a quick break. Let's come back in 5 minutes. It is now 3:30. I'll see you back at 3:35. Our computer's not working. Madam Clerk, you can just give us a heads up when you're ready. I know we're waiting on some synchronization. You just give us a heads up when you're ready, Madam Clerk. Well, what did make a little news today is the amount of investment we've made in infrastructure. And I hope that the public, goes back and see what that is. Councilmember Baker, do we know what the total was?
It's a lot.
It was about 16 million for street repaving and about 6 million for sidewalk repair.
Wow.
In this, did we just approve?
Yep. We'll approve. Just want to make sure the media caught that. Just wanted to make sure the media caught that $16 million investment in street paving and $6 million for sidewalks repairs. That's almost an infrastructure bond. Not near. Okay, more to come. 100 million. Yeah, sidewalks are about what, 1.1 million per mile?
Per foot.
It's crazy expensive.
It's not, you don't get a lot for $1 million on a sidewalk. It's very expensive. Very.
That's crazy. I remember the report when they, because I know we have enough city-owned streets from Durham to Dallas, and it was like, I think 19 billion or something to fix all of them. To have sidewalks along every street. I know this is painfully quiet if you're watching at home online, but We are awaiting to tabulate all of the votes so that we can choose finalists in which we will be interviewing to fill the vacant seat. And I just
Mr.
saw
Mayor?
the clerk grab the microphone.
Yes, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council members, we do have a variety of nominations that have received 4 or more nominations by council. The first is Amanda Boer. The second is Sheila Huggins. The third is Chelsea Cook. And the fourth is Chastan Swain.
Could you read those one more time?
Certainly. Amanda Boer received 4. Sheila Huggins received 5. Chelsea Cook received 4. And Chastan Swain received 4.
Okay, so we have 4 finalists to be interviewed.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
You're welcome.
Good?
Councilmember Javier, we all good?
Thank you, Chairman.
Yep. All right. So, Madam Clerk, you'll alert our 4 finalists about interviews on Monday night. To everyone who did apply and send in questionnaires, thank you. Having personally been through this process, I think along with Councilmember Baker, it is intimidating. So, thank you.
It definitely is intimidating.
And Mayor Williams.
Oh yeah, I went through it as well. It is a very intimidating process, but thank you all so much. At this time, I will entertain a motion to proceed into closed session.
Move to go into closed session. Second.
Well, before I'm sorry, let me suspend that entertaining of the motion to allow the motion to be read by City Attorney Kimberly Rayburg.
Thank you, Mayor Williams. The motion is to hold a closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A3 for attorney-client consultation concerning the handling of a settlement demand for a yet-to-be-filed liability claim.
So moved. Moved is read.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor? Please show by your sign of your hand. Thank you. We will proceed to closed session, and we will go up to the committee room. We'll come back here to, do we need to come back downstairs?
No,
All right, so thank you all for joining us. If you're in the chambers, no one. And we'll now proceed to closed session.